All right, folks, welcome back. It's time for another deep dive into Boston true crime. And forget those fancy Harvard tours or catching a game at Fenway.
Yeah, forget the Freedom Trail.
Exactly. We're going straight to the heart of the case that'll make you think twice about leaving your toolbox unlocked.
Yeah.
Just in case.
Because in Boston, you just never know when someone might accuse you of assault with a wrench.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Tonight's deep dive takes us to Burlington, Massachusetts. Picture this: a rainy night, a frantic 911 call, and our guy John Doe pseudonym, of course, finding himself in a real pickle.
Oh, yeah. John Doe was facing some serious accusations. A violent struggle, a shattered window. The alleged victim claimed he used a tool from his work kit as a weapon.
See, typical Boston, right? One minute you're fixing a leaky faucet, the next you're starring in your own episode of Law & Order, Burlington. But wait, there's more.
Oh, it gets better.
It always does. The media got a hold of this story and things spiraled out of control.
Big time. Especially when the alleged victim threw a rape accusation into the mix. Yeah, suddenly John Doe, this quiet guy with no priors, is being painted as some kind of monster by the press.
Classic trial by media, I tell ya.
And public opinion.
Well, let's just say they weren't exactly on Team Doe.
Not a lot of sympathy going around.
Nope. So with the pressure mounting, enter Veronica J. White, Doe's defense attorney.
Veronica J. White. Now there's a legend in Boston legal circles, known for her sharp mind and even sharper courtroom tactics.
I like to think of her as the legal equivalent of a Boston Terrier, small but fierce.
Yeah, I can see that. So what's White's first move in this legal chess match?
Good question. What does she do?
She immediately goes after the order of dangerousness that the Middlesex County DA's office filed against Doe.
Order of dangerousness. Whoa.
This order basically meant he was considered too dangerous to be released on bail.
Wait, hold on. Dangerous. Based on what? A broken window and some missing tools. That seems a bit much, don't you think?
That's exactly what White argued. She pointed out the lack of concrete evidence and emphasized Doe's clean record. Her argument was basically, look, this guy's never been in trouble before. You can't just lock him up based on some flimsy accusations.
And the DA's office, they just caved.
Not entirely, but they did drop the rape charge. That's a pretty significant development early on.
Okay, that is interesting. Almost like they realized that part of the story wasn't adding up. So what happened next? Did John Doe walk free?
Not so fast. Remember, he's still facing those assault charges. And Veronica J. White, being the thorough attorney she is, isn't about to let this go. She dives headfirst into the discovery phase of the trial.
Discovery. That sounds like something out of National Treasure, but with legal briefs instead of ancient maps. Break it down for us non-lawyer types.
Sure, discovery is essentially a legal process where both sides have to show their hand. The defense gets to see all the evidence the prosecution has, witness statements, forensic reports, the whole shebang. It's all about ensuring a fair trial.
So Veronica J. White gets a peek behind the curtain to see what the DA's office is working with. Sounds juicy.
It gets even juicier. She didn't just stick to the local scene. White launched a full-blown interstate investigation into the alleged victim's past.
Whoa, now that's dedication. Digging deep.
Oh, yeah. She was looking into previous relationships, encounters with law enforcement, anything that could shed light on the situation.
Okay, so were there any skeletons in the alleged victim's closet?
Well, let's just say the investigation uncovered some inconsistencies in the alleged victim's story. Some things weren't adding up.
Ooh, sounds like we're about to get into the good stuff. What kind of inconsistencies are we talking about?
For one, the forensic evidence was inconclusive, and some witness statements didn't quite match up with the initial story from the alleged victim.
So the supposedly airtight case against John Doe is starting to look a little leaky. Yeah. Kind of like that faucet he was fixing before this whole mess began.
You could say that. And remember those scattered tools at the alleged crime scene? They weren't exactly talking.
Yeah. Interesting. So we've got shaky evidence, a dropped rape charge, and an alleged victim with a bit of a mysterious past. Where does Veronica J. White take it from here?
Well, White starts building her defense. And remember, she's not just reacting to the prosecution's case, she's crafting a counter-narrative, a story that paints John Doe in a different light.
So less tool-wielding maniac and more like what? Misunderstood handyman caught in a web of deceit.
Yeah, something like that. And those inconsistencies in the alleged victim's story, they become crucial here. White starts poking holes in the prosecution's narrative, raising doubts about the alleged victim's credibility.
It's like that game Jenga, right? You pull out one too many blocks and the whole tower comes crashing down.
Yeah.
In this case, the tower is the prosecution's case.
Exactly. And you can imagine how the prosecution must have felt the ground beneath their case was starting to crumble. But hold on tight, because here comes the real plot twist.
Oh, I love a good plot twist. Lay it on me. Did the alleged victim suddenly remember she actually tripped over a garden gnome and blamed it on John Doe?
Not quite that dramatic, but close. The alleged victim, facing intense scrutiny and a mountain of inconsistencies, decides to invoke her Fifth Amendment right
A Fifth Amendment.
and refuse to testify.
Whoa, hold up. That changes everything. Talk about throwing a wrench into the prosecution's plans.
Yeah.
No pun intended, of course.
None taken. You see, without the alleged victim's testimony, the prosecution's case is practically built on sand. They might have some circumstantial evidence, but there's no direct eyewitness putting John Doe at the scene of the alleged assault.
So it all boils down to this. He said, she said, but she isn't saying anything.
Mm.
What does Veronica J. White do with this golden opportunity?
She seizes it, of course. White marches right up to the judge and argues for a dismissal of the case.
As she should.
She points out that without the alleged victim's testimony, the prosecution simply can't meet their burden of proof for a conviction.
It makes perfect sense to me. It's like trying to bake a cake without flour. You might have all the other ingredients, but it's just not going to work.
Exactly. A perfect analogy. And the judge, after reviewing the evidence, or the lack thereof, agreed with White. The charges against John Doe are dismissed.
Freedom for John Doe. So case closed, right?
Well, there's a little caveat. The charges were dismissed without prejudice.
Hold on. Legal jargon alert. What's the difference between a regular dismissal and a without prejudice dismissal? Does it involve party hats and confetti?
Haha. Not quite. Without prejudice basically means the prosecution could theoretically refile charges if new evidence comes to light.
Okay.
But let's be real. Without the alleged victim's testimony, that's about as likely as spotting a unicorn strolling through Boston Common.
So John Doe is essentially a free man. But with this little asterisk hanging over his head, that must be a strange feeling, right? Relieved, but also knowing this whole ordeal could come back to haunt him.
Absolutely. It's a unique kind of limbo. And this is where we need to step back and consider the wider implications of this case.
Yeah.
Because while John Doe might be legally exonerated, the accusations can leave lasting scars.
It's true. It's like trying to scrub out a coffee stain from your favorite shirt. Even if you get most of it out, there's always a faint reminder of what happened.
Right. And that stain can impact your reputation, your relationships, your job prospects, all because of accusations that were never proven in court.
It really makes you think about innocent until proven guilty, doesn't it? In theory, it's a cornerstone of our justice system. But in practice, it feels like public opinion often jumps the gun.
That's the big question we're grappling with in this deep dive, isn't it? How do we balance that legal principle with the very human instinct to judge and form opinions?
Deep stuff. We've barely scratched the surface. There's so much more to uncover. Stay tuned for part 3, where we'll delve even deeper into this case and what it all means for innocent until proven guilty in this age of instant judgment and social media trials. Okay, so we're back, folks, wrapping up our deep dive into the John Doe case. The charges are gone, the courtroom drama is over, but we're left with this lingering question. Does this whole thing change how we think about innocent until proven guilty?
Well, it definitely complicates things. No doubt about that. You know, this case really highlights that clash between the ideal of due process and the reality of how fast people jump to conclusions in the court of public opinion.
Right, it's like that saying, you can't unring a bell. Even if someone's declared innocent, the accusations themselves can stick with them. So how do we balance that?
Yeah.
How do we protect the accused while still acknowledging the experiences of alleged victims?
Yeah, that's a tough one. You know, I think we have to start by remembering that an accusation, no matter how serious it is, doesn't automatically mean someone is guilty. Of course, it's natural to react emotionally, especially when we hear stories that pull at our heartstrings.
Yeah.
But we can't let emotions completely take over.
I hear that. But it's easier said than done right, especially in the age of social media, where information, and let's face it, misinformation spreads like wildfire. It's like everyone's a judge and jury these days, ready to hand down a verdict based on a headline or a tweet.
That's so true. And that's why it's more important than ever to think critically. You know, before you share that shocking news story or jump on the bandwagon, take a second to pause, question your assumptions, and think about the possibility that there might be more to the story than what you see at first glance.
It's like being a detective.
Yeah.
Right. Got to look for clues, examine the evidence.
Yeah.
And not just take things at face value.
Exactly. And we have to remember that the legal system is meant to be a slow and careful process. It's not about rushing to judgment. It's about looking at the facts, protecting everyone's rights, and ensuring fairness.
It can be a messy process for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But as we saw with John Doe, it's a process that can work. So what's the big takeaway here? What should our listeners keep in mind after this deep dive?
I think John Doe's story is a powerful reminder that innocent until proven guilty isn't just some legal phrase, it's a call to action. It reminds us to approach these situations with an open mind, a critical eye, and a commitment to fairness and due process.
Well said. It's so easy to get caught up in the drama and the emotion, but at the end of the day, real lives are on the line. So the next time you hear about some shocking crime in Boston, remember John Doe, remember that wrench, and remember that the truth is often a lot more complicated than it seems at first. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone.
The names and certain details in this podcast have been changed to protect the privacy of the individuals involved. While the cases presented are based upon real events, certain facts may have been altered or omitted for confidentiality purposes. Each case is inspired by real legal cases defended by White & Associates PC. This podcast is intended for educational and informational purposes only and should not be construed as legal advice. Any resemblance to real persons, living or dead, is purely coincidental. White & Associates PC does not endorse or guarantee the accuracy or completeness of the information discussed in this episode.